All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. I am sorry for the, brief hiatus I've been on. I've been super busy trying to prepare for Eternal Weekend US in particular, where I'm going to be doing commentary for the Legacy portion, and that has taken a lot of my time. Then a lot of players have booked tons of coaching, so I've been super busy between, playing my favorite tournaments and doing work stuff. So, yeah, with that being said, I've been looking forward to this, and yeah, you can definitely expect a more solid schedule in the future. So, thanks for sticking with me. Let's dive into today's topic. This weekend was the Legacy Showcase Challenge, and much like the NZD Eternal Showcase, whatever you want to call it, last weekend or maybe the week before, weeks are kind of blending together for me right now. I want to kind of digest the top 32 because I think that is a very, very solid indicator on how Legacy's doing. So I'm going to do a similar breakdown, look at the decks, the trends, the tech that people brought, and the overall health of the format. So a little bit of everything, but overall, this should be worth your time. So yeah, let's get into it. So first of all, 351 players, that is a lot. So worth noting is Eternal Weekend is coming up. That also always means, some players are out of the woodwork. They want to prepare, so they play some leagues. Maybe they get to 40 QPs so they can play this tournament. Also, Magic Online has recently started to pay out more QPs. Like if you top 16 a challenge, you get QPs. So all in all, this is a high number, but it also doesn't surprise me given the timing and the whole how Magic Online awards qualifier points these days. So not super important, just something to note. So first of all, taking down the event, first place, and you're going to hear this correctly, it's Sneak and Show. So why is Sneak and Show all of a sudden back? Because the upgrades are very minor. We're looking at, Vexing Bauble as some kind of counterplay towards Force of Will, Force of Negation. Then we're looking at a couple of copies of Yggdrasil Rebirth Engine. So a 3-mana artifact. When it enters, exile all creature cards from your graveyard. Why is the first line of text relevant? Just imagine a scenario where you get like an Attracts a Thought Seized or something along those lines. Then all of a sudden, that is all of a sudden an advantage because for 4 mana, you can put a creature card exile with Yggdrasil onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste until end of turn, so it's kind of like a sneak attack thing, right? And then you can tap it to keep milling the top 3 of your deck. So this is not a reliable 1-2 punch, like play it, then reanimate, but it does give the deck a bit more density when it comes to action cards on top of the sneak attacks and on top of the show and tells. So this deck's pretty standard creature suite. So let's see, 8 creatures, 10 enablers. That makes a lot of sense. The enablers are what you need to, let's say you have 2 of them, you want to go back to back, get the first one counter, resolve the next one. It's not that important that you have 2 creatures. Also, triggering Attracts will help you get into the next creature in case you need it. So I think I like that ratio. With that being said, we also have Omniscience here, which solves some, Caracas issues or whatever the case may be. So that card just pitches to Force if it's not relevant. A couple of Spell Pierce as to round out the flex slots. We play a mix between Lotus Petal and Simian Spirit Guide, which is interesting, but I imagine it's some kind of hedge for our own bauble and opposing baubles, I guess. Also, Simian Spirit Guide being a non-onboard way to beat days, so I can see that split being relevant. Keep your opponent guessing. A couple of Thundering Falls in the mana base to add more consistency to the deck, and it looks like this version moved away from green. Green for Veil of Summer was kind of industry standard at some point. This sideboard it's very high on the graveyard hate, but these cages are great against Nadu as well. Consigns of Memory against Eldrazi. Single Hydroblast. Hydroblast is actually very flexible these days. We can get back to that at a later time. Null Rods to respect a faster combo deck out of Forge. Magus to, some decks just fold to Magus of the Moon, so I like having that tool in my arsenal. And then some blasts to shore up the blue matchup. Second place, I know they split the finals, but I guess second place on paper. Good old Lampalot, my good friend Michael. Michael hasn't played Legacy for ages, decided to sign up randomly to this tournament and ran the tables all the way to the finals. So pretty amazing feat. It looks like very, very standard Eldrazi. Fee Education, first of all, that must be a European player. Great name. And this player chose to bring Blue-Black Reanimator. Let's see if anything stands out. Single Fanatic. Not really. Couple of Wasteland, 3 days, 3 Thoughtseize. Sideboard, anything spicy. I guess really playing different yard hate here. 1 Macabre, 1 Surgical, 1 Ghost Vacuum. Those will come up in different scenarios. I made a video about Graveyard Hate a while back. You should definitely check that out if you're in the market for a bit of more of the nerdy stuff. Let's see Laser Beam here. Laser Beam made top 4 with Eldrazi, so already incredible tournament for Eldrazi overall. You know, the 1 Null Drifter, the 2 sideboarded Null Rods, 2 Once Upon a Time, 2 One Ring. I mean, we've seen that list before. Then we have Wonder Pro here, always doing good work with Doomsday, and this is interesting because it looks like one of the premier Doomsday pilots. This is just from me looking on the outside. I don't know this player. I know the name, right? One of the premier Doomsday players decided that playing with no frogs and no Tamios is good. So this is a bit more, you know, if that plan becomes a known entity, you know, the Tameo Frog plan, then all of a sudden, maybe Personal Tutor Cabal Ritual version will, you know, blank a lot of removal, still keep your opponent guessing what's going on, and obviously take this tournament by storm. Like, very, very awesome finish. Fortress in the sideboard, that's peculiar. That's very, very targeted for, you know, getting rid of counters in your opponent's hand or playing combo mirrors. Force Negation, same thing. So we kind of transform into the better, let's say the better control deck or whatever the case may be with inevitability, looking for the opponent to go for it. And that strategy is huge if you manage to pull it off. If the opponent kind of smells that, then it becomes a bit of a weird game, but I like that a lot. Jay's Wielder Mysteries, alternate win con. Then we have Oops All Spells. That deck kind of broke through a week or 2 ago. It won the NCD tournament, and it looks like this is the same version. I just recognized the 1 Narcomoeba being a bit controversial, I guess. 2 Chrome Mox. I'm not an expert on this deck, but I do recognize the sideboard, the Belcher plan, and the backup Return and Lotlust Giant, so that's pretty cool innovation. You should definitely familiarize yourself with how Jack-O-Lantern and the Shuffler, the Memory's Journey work when it comes to your, you know, Macabres and your Ghost Vacuum. That's definitely something to study before Eternal Weekend. Then we have, speaking of Mystic Forge, we have Mystic Forge here. I'm always looking at the mana base whenever I see a deck like this. So it turns out we are down to 18 lands with only 2 Urza's Workshop. Still play the combo of Urza's Tower and Planar Nexus to hopefully get 4 mana on turn 2. Saga Ancient Tomb, that's the other good land pair in the deck. That's basically the 1-2 punch that's going to let you beat hate. Hate, that could be stuff like Null Rod. Yeah, this deck is trying to draw its whole deck and win with Fleshraker. Fleshraker is the perfect win con because it's also just a solid card early on, where usually your win cons have historically been win more out of these decks. So I like to see that. Sideboard, it's a Karn sideboard, and you play, this is actually kind of cool, so you play Wastegate Battle Mage as a way to kill opposing Null Rod, or Bounce Collector Roof, I guess, but realistically it's going to be the Null Rod, so let's see, how do you cast that card? You cast it with Planar Nexus, filtering mana, or I guess some pedal action. I don't know. Probably not the most reliable, but it gives you a sense of having game against Null Rod. And wow, in 8th place we have another, it looks like another Turbo Doomsday deck. So we have the Personal Tutors, we have the Cabal Rituals, so that tells me this player is not looking to mess around. A couple of Fatal Pushes, though, which is an odd choice for the main deck, but, I mean, if you really expect to play against a lot of Frogs decks trying to sit behind Counter Magic, Fatal Push is going to be a good pre-sideboarded tool. Sideboard looks similar to the other one, except we're way more heavy on the Plan B, the Baraglyphs of the world, and the Murktide Regents. Way lower on Duress. And we still try with some Cage and Null Rod Haymakers against other broken decks. 9th place, always a bittersweet finish. Obviously, in a 350-player tournament, pretty darn awesome. We're looking at mono red here. It looks like the flex slots here is like 1 Unlicensed Hearse and 1 Lelia, replacing a couple of Blood Moons. So this is basically, this says to me that this player doesn't think you can rely fully on Blood Moons. And with almost no Lightning Bolts in the metagame and very low Dismember, Magus of the Moon is just a better card than Blood Moon. Interesting, and I think I buy into that logic. The corner case being the opponent can, fetch, float black, and fatal push the Magus, where they couldn't do that with the Moon. But then if you play a lot of mirrors, at least you have a 2/2 and not a completely blank card. I think I buy into the logic, actually. Sideboard pretty standard, aside from the Obsidian Charmaw, which is a somewhat recent tech. This card is obviously awesome against Eldrazi. I love it. Probably going to be like the best Molten Rain you'll ever cast. Also, I think it's actually even better because in the mirror, it's actually a serviceable card. Like, it's not exciting or anything, but it's actually serviceable. Huh. Okay, I'll think about that more, because traditionally that has been the problem with this deck, that whenever you face let's say an Ancient Tomb mirror, you don't have enough cards to bring in because you're spending so many slots on Graveyard Hate and Pyroblast. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Then we have another Eldrazi deck, incredibly standard. It's so funny how these versions, I mean, obviously, there is a chance that some players got to the perfect version. That is obviously a possibility. It also took a lot of time. Like, I remember Mox Diamond versions. I remember the green 3-drop, the red 3-drop. Can't remember the names. Maybe it's something like Linebreaker or whatever the case may be. These lists were all over the place in the beginning. So at least now we see a trend, and then it's just very extreme with, 2 rings, 2 Once Upon a Time, 2 Mindbreak Traps, 2 Null Rod. It's, what do you call it? Cookie cutter, I guess you can call it. But then again, maybe they're just correct. So what do we have here? Let's see. Okay, I thought this card was something else. Yeah, this is the winner of the NCD tournament, still playing Oops All Spells, still crushing. 11th place in this tournament is amazing. Then we have blue-black. I would even call this blue-black mid-range. I mean, no 1-drops aside from Tamiyo. And then we have Baleful Strix plus the Ninja Planeswalker. Pretty cool. So this is trying to go slightly bigger. We're up to 3 Thoughtseize here. It's not something that I've done as well in my Delver versions. I think just not losing is just awesome. Having the info is awesome. 4 Consigned to Memory, so huge respect for Eldrazi, and it crossovers against Forge, so that's pretty cool. What about Graveyard Hate? Let's try and see here. 1 Macabre, 1 Vacuum. What do we have in the main deck? Looks like a couple of Nile Spell Bombs, so not going overboard. Oh, there's Unlicensed Search as well. So not going overboard. 2+3 is like the standard these days, I would say. Then we have a little bit of what looks to be Painter with Bombardiers in it, so a little, and even main deck Ghost Vacuum. So this is like a Painter deck trying to be a bit more accommodating to what the format is doing and not as much on its own plan. But with that said, Broadside Bombardier is just solid against, most things, and a couple of Ghost Vacuums. Yeah, who knows? You need to hit the right matchups for that card to be great. Any Dimir deck and you're happy. Sideboard very focused on shutting down lands, killing small creatures, and handling the graveyard, with a couple of more blasts on top and a little bit of mirror hedge, I guess, with Shattering Spree. This is what I want to see. Now we see... Okay. I wasn't ready for this. So now we see Delver in 14th place here, and it looks like this is exactly my main deck. Love to see it. And it looks like Damping Sphere and a couple of Snuff Outs is the tweaks for the sideboard. I will say that the 75 I have landed on is going to look a tiny bit different, but more on that later. I'll definitely update the Patreon very, very soon. So awesome to see Delver here. Then we have what looks to be Grixis. Okay, so this player always doing cool things, especially in Vintage. This player wants to play Dragon Rage Channeler and Nethergoyf, doesn't think Delver is good enough, but thinks Hymn to Torag is good enough. So this is pretty awesome. I would bet there's a Badlands, yes, Badlands in the mana base, alongside 3 Underground Seas and a Surveil, so heavily tilted towards black, as you should if you're trying to support him. You're still on the 4 Wasteland plan. I'll be a bit scared about the mana base here. Molten Collapse, I do like. Molten Collapse in a perfect world can kill something like Bauble or Chalice, while also just being the big removal you need when you're facing down like a Fanatic or a Troll or opposing Murktide. So pretty cool deck. Oh wow, even up to 4 Molten Collapse. Well, I wouldn't go that far, I think, but I like the idea for sure. 16th place, around top 16, we have a more classic Dimir tempo. 3 Nethergoyfs, small hedge against the trend of and knowing Graveyard Hate, mainly Ghost Vacuum, which will keep your Nethergoyfs down, and that is not ideal. Kaito's in the mix. I mean, I like that card. I'm a bit scared that I can't ninjutsu it too often with this list, but I guess Tamiyo's pretty good at that. So yeah, cool innovation. It's a good value card. Can go slightly over the top of some stuff. One Reanimate here. Decent innovation. Not gonna hurt. It's very good against black removal. It's good against when you connect on Thoughtseize, Force of Will, or Daze on the opponent. Just a nice card without making your deck weak to Graveyard Hate. Note, only one Nile Spellbob in the main deck, so a lot of players are definitely trending away from, main deck and a ton of Graveyard Hate. Couple of cages in the sideboard. Love to see that. Blue Blast is a very versatile card these days. The obvious Moon Stumpy, it's good against Painter, and now even when Sneak and Show and various Storm variants are on the cards, not bad at all. What's up next? Classic Eldrazi. I'm gonna go through that, but I will note that this is like the third or fourth Eldrazi deck, so pretty darn good event for that deck. Now, this is some spice. So now we see 4 Stifles in the classic Reanimator deck. So why would you play Stifle in Reanimator? My first thoughts are it's a random gotcha card that will win games. It's a card that handles a lot of hate. Imagine you reanimate, the opponent, has a Fair Macabre, you Stifle, huge blowout. You try and reanimate, the opponent activates Ghost Vacuum, you counter it. So between answering, Nile Spellbomb, Soul Guide, Lantern, Hearse, it's all the same. Between handling all hate cards, because Leyline sees so little play, I like some number of Stifle. I think 4 is going a bit overboard. I think you're going to have to keep a lot of, one-landers. Should you ponder turn 1? Should you hold up Stifle? And then if you guess incorrectly, you're going to be in a bad shape. Let's say you hold up mana, the opponent goes Underground Sea and just plays a random magic card. That's bad. If you go ponder, the opponent fetches, then Stifle kind of is not going to be effective. So I appreciate it as an anti-hate card, but I'm not sure the tempo plan is getting there that often. I mean, for Stifle, that's funny. For Stifle, 4 days for Wasteland. I mean, sure, that is a plan, but your only quote-unquote Delver mechanic is going to be the 4 frogs. So I don't know. I love the idea. I don't exactly love how it plays out in practice when I think about it. So now we have one more Painter deck rather, which looks to be a tiny bit more focused on its own plan, and it even incorporates One Ring. So I remember talking about this a little bit before, the One Ring, but you only support it with 1 City of Traders and 1 Mox Opal, no Spirit Guides. So you could say like this is not a good One Ring deck, but One Ring is an amazing card, so maybe that's good enough, right? I remember having a similar discussion where somebody said, oh yeah, this is not a good Black Lotus deck, and it's not the best Black Lotus deck in the world, but this was obviously talking about Cube, but Black Lotus is still great in the deck, so it's 2 different things, right? It doesn't really matter if there's somebody who uses this card better. That's not really relevant for whether you should play this card or not. With that said, I'm on the fence about the card, mainly because we have a hard time accelerating it out. I mean, Living the Dream with Welders, that's obviously going to be awesome. Looks like pretty standard stuff out of that sideboard. In 2023 has Ruby Storm, and Ruby Storm is a deck that is highly annoying to play against. So you're basically using these discount cards like Ral and the actual card Ruby Medallion, and then you're looking on a discount for your Draw 2s and your Jeska's Will and your Burning Wishes and your bonus round. So this deck is pretty cool. It can be hard to combat. For instance, do you want Consign to Memory against this deck? I mean, you probably do, between Ruby Medallion and the opponent relying on the Storm mechanic. But then in any given game, you can miss. So funnily enough, this is a cool crossover for Hydroblast. We basically play a Wish sideboard. Well, I guess, wait a minute. So we only play one. Oh, we play 5 Wishes, that's why. So 4 Burning Wish and 1 Wish. That makes a lot of sense. 4 Spirit Guides out of the sideboard. I'm actually interested. I guess we're just trying to speed up our, pseudo combo mirror, and we're looking to pay for days, but who knows? Huge toolbox there. 21st place. Now, this is also spicy because I'm seeing a modern legal card here. When I say modern legal, it's, I mean, obviously a lot of cards are, but, you know, classic modern cards. So, Abhorrent Oculus, 5/5 for 3 mana, but you need to exile 6 cards from your graveyard. So, this is kind of a Murktide Regent when it comes to exiling your graveyard. It is a flyer. At the beginning of each opponent upkeep, you manifest Dread. So, that means you look at the top 2. Put one of them that face down as a 2/2 and the other one in your graveyard. So it kind of builds towards the next one and sometimes mill over a fatty. Just, you know, very solid threat once in play. And the fact that it kind of populates the 2/2s, I love that a lot. What I don't love is that it's a graveyard centric threat in a deck where my opponent is incentivized to shut down my graveyard. So when you're playing 4 Oculus in your deck, you're not really making your deck more versatile. You're trying to overload the opponent rather, which is, you know, it's definitely worth talking about because you could play Baragoyf or, you know, fewer copies of this card or Murktide Regent or Emperor of Bones or Orcish Bowmasters in this slot. So definitely, I love the idea, and obviously it worked great. 21st place out of this huge field is awesome. No real spice in the sideboard. We see a little Null Rod showing up, showing deep respect for the Mystic Forge deck. But other than that, pretty standard. 22nd place, we have the classic blue-black. I'm going to call it mid-range when I don't see the Goyf in it. This deck is not going to kill anybody fast, but it's not going to grind anybody like in the super long game out either. So finish the game. If you're playing this deck, you really want to press the issue. I guess going up to 3 Murktides is going to help that a bit. And when you're playing against it, you're going to have some turns from, you know, turn 5, 6, 7, where you actually can draw your high impact spell and win the game. Sideboard, pretty standard. I'm interested why the Surgical Extraction is back in the mix. Maybe players are looking to pair it with Thoughtseize and, you know, screw over some Nadu decks or whatever. That's decent crossover. Next up, we have a more standard-looking Reanimator deck. This player found room for a Griselbrand in the main deck. Well, I guess also 2 Tamios. So basically no Fatal Pushes. So a little bit of a grindy element. Sometimes Tamio just gets killed, which means Frog sticks more often. And then Griselbrand for the 3rd fatty, which is going to be the better fatty against Control, usually. And I guess trimming on days here. Sideboard, pretty standard. The Long Goodbyes, the way to, you know, kill flip Tamios, kill frogs. If you think that's the name of the game, this removal spell is definitely worth your while. 24th place, looks like standard Eldrazi to me. I guess no Mindbreak Traps in the sideboard this time, but very, very standard. We know these numbers. Next up, okay, now things get a bit spicy. Is this Bant Stoneforge Nadu? Yeah. So Stoneforge Mystic can go and get the 1 Shuko. So that's basically like more ways to come with the Nadu. It can grind with pre-War Formalware. It can kill opponents with Culture Complete. It can, you know, control the opponent's board with Assimilation Aegis. And then you have this Agatha's Soul Cauldron sprinkled in for good measure to double up on your Nomads. You know, your Nomads that got killed or whatever. And it's also Graveyard Hate. So pretty interesting toolbox here. And we even have Cavern of Souls. So I guess I have to check up on... So Core Artificer. Core. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we have a double up on Core creature type. And then, of course, resolving Nadu is going to be amazing. Sometimes the opponent is calculating with their Force of Will to stop it. And then you go Cavern on Bird or Wizard, I guess. And then all of a sudden, you look like a champ. So... pretty interesting strategy. I will say these decks seem kind of weak to opposing combo decks in general, with only having, you know, Force of Will and their own game plan to, you know, to beat it. So I'm actually surprised we see quite a low number of cards like Stony Silence, Deafening Silence, Force Negation in general, like pretty low numbers. So these pilots must, like the Bant Nadu crew, they must have pretty high confidence that they can brawl with the other broken decks. All right, what do we have next? Looks like the good old Cradle Control. Andrea Mingucci is smiling somewhere in Italy. This deck is a toolbox deck, and this deck is also still a natural order deck. And, you know, this deck is just very hard to play against because of the toolbox that Reclaimer and White of the Reliquary are providing. All of a sudden, you're a deck that has access to, Bajuka Bog, you have the Talons to control the board and get in for damage. You even have to worry about 0 mana Endurance disrupting you if you're on a graveyard strategy or attacking with your Nethergoyf or whatever the case may be. I like this deck a lot. I'm a bit worried that the format now has too much, Sneak and Show, Mystic Forge, stuff like that combined. But if you're an expert, this deck looks awesome. Also, Collector Roof is in the main deck. I was about to say I couldn't spot Collector Roof in the sideboard, so this deck is even hedging so much that it's playing Collector Roof in the main deck. I wonder what the extra Bristly Bills are for. Could be for games where you're expecting your opponent to kill a lot of your creatures and you have to rely more on individual card quality. That could be the case. For Thoughtseize, very, very versatile card against any combo deck. Couple of Needles with Nadus and Nomads in the mix. And then some Graveyard Hate and a free removal and Snuff Out. Oh, okay. 27th place. Now things look to get incredibly spicy because we're looking at the 80-card deck here, Esper Vial. So it looks like this deck got some new tools. So we see a lot of the cards that we've seen before, but now we see Psychic Frog because we have, blue and black mana in our deck. We see Philia Exuberant Shepherd. This is a card that lets you blink over and over and kind of has to get killed, or this deck is just going to run away with the game. And I have to give this one a read. The Overlord of the Balemerk. So Impending 2, you can play it for 2. Then when it enters, you mill 4 and return a non-avatar or a planeswalker. Okay, so this is basically hopefully a creature cantrip that will hit. And then if you manage to blink it with Philia, then all of a sudden you get the 5/5, because otherwise we have to kind of wait until the counters are taken off turn by turn, end step after end step, or we have to vial it in for 5, which is actually not terrible considering we're a Yorion deck, so getting vial to 5 is actually within our interests. So this deck looks awesome against fair decks once again, but now we're playing an 80-card deck with only 4 Force of Wills, so let's see how we compensate out of the sideboard. We compensate with a couple of Deafening Silence, and then 4 Macabres for Graveyard, 4 Consigns for Eldrazi and Forge. And then I guess the rest is just going to be, Harbinger of the Seas to shut down Eldrazi decks, Merit Lage decks, or whatever. Kataki against artifacts. Lorang, kind of the same thing when you have to kill a specific card. And then Opposition Agent, I guess, will win the game against stuff like Doomsday. So this deck looks like a blast to play, but I'm worried about Legacy being simply too diverse these days. Next up, we have Mono Red with what looks like 8 moons. This is actually how I would build the deck going into Eternal Weekend. So I like to see this a lot. I think a card like Disruptor Flute is an awesome innovation because this deck needs cards that you bring in multiple places. Otherwise, the sideboard simply becomes too straightforward or too, lackluster. Like that a lot. 29th place, Mystic Forge. And once again, we see a difference in the mana base. Now we see 4 City of Traders, 4 Crystal Vein, and even an Inventor's Fair. We don't play the Ursa's Tower package. We don't play Ursa's Workshop at all. That's just the way it goes with this deck. Nobody really knows yet. Kind of where the Eldrazi deck was at 2 months ago. 30th place, we have another Reanimator deck, this time with Lotus Petal to hopefully speed up things. Pay for days, you open up the opportunity to be a turn 1 Entomb Reanimate deck, or turn 1 Psychic Frog deck, daze your turn 1 Plow, run away with the game. We're also running Wastelands. I'm not big on Wastelands and Petals. I would rather pick one of them. I would actually be interested in trying this deck with, more than 2 Petals and see how much we can squeeze out of it. But that's the story for another day. This sideboard is very focused. 4 Baraglyphs for the mid-range pivot, 4 Harbingers for Eldrazi and other greedy decks, couple of Null for Forge, a little bit more hedge against the colorless decks, and then just 4 Macabres. Wow, okay, so this player's not messing around. I think definitely diversifying the sideboard is going to do do a lot, but I mean, who am I? I went 0-1 in this tournament, so who am I to have an opinion about these things? Oh, next up we have blue black almost tempo, 2 Netherglyphs, 4 days, 4 wasteland. Okay. 4 Thoughtseize. Wow. So I mean, I love Thoughtseize, but I think 4 is a lot on a life loss card that is kind of bad on the draw against Ancient Tomb decks. Can be bad in multiples if it comes down to a race. So yeah, I'll not register 4 Thoughtseize, but I'm also a big fan of that card. Sideboard, pretty standard stuff. Couple of Hydros this time to hedge against all the red stuff we already discussed. And then last up, we have another, well, not another, because I guess the other one was a Stoneforge deck. We have a Bant Nadu deck. Looks very, very standard, except it looks like we're not playing the stuff like Endurance. We're not running... what else are we not running? We're not running the flex cards like Uro, like Keen-Eyed Curator. We are pretty focused on doing our thing, which I like. Still the 2 Teferis, 4 Ponders, single ending. That's kind of the flex slot of that deck. Let's see, what about the sideboard? We actually have the opportunity to Zenith into Galactique. That's kind of cool. Outland Liberator. Okay. Single Veil of Summer to, upgrade in any blue-black scenario where you think you're going to get Thoughtseize or the opponent might have Force of Will. Single Carpet to help out your mana base against all blue decks. The Seiju. I mean, this is just interesting because it's just like small upgrades here and there, and then it's like only, the Consigns and the Hydroblast and the Macabres that are looking to actually, solve, specific matchups. Other than that, it's like all blue decks, all artifacts, enchantments. Same with this card. Galactique against some, One Ring decks or Storm decks, I guess. So yeah, it's just cool to see different philosophy of sideboards. So all in all, I really like what Legacy looks like here. It looks like we only had, and I'm saying only because of where we come from, handful of Reanimator, sure, but not dominant or anything. Handful of Eldrazi. That deck had an insanely good tournament. But that's not a problem, right? We can up our Blood Moon count and our Price of Progress count and our, we have counterplay against those decks. So all in all, I love what Legacy looks like going into Eternal Weekend, and I think more than ever, it's just important that whenever you build a sideboard, make sure you have, tools that are versatile rather than just solve one thing. I think the frequency where you bring a card in is very, very important compared to bringing a card in once during a whole weekend, where it's like a lights out haymaker. If you could have played a card that will be sideboarded in 7 times and improve valuable percentages every time. That's my philosophy anyway. You can obviously build a only haymaker sideboard that's going to be very hit or miss. That's not illegal at all. This is only my my suggestion when the format has opened up so much. I still think it's true. You cannot just flat out lose to Reanimator game 1. I still think that's true. But aside from that, plenty of room to brew, whether you like, attacking the opponent's life total, whether you like comboing out with spells, whether you like comboing out on the board, whether you like playing, cantrips, setting up, squeezing value out of blue-black decks. This format, you can kind of do whatever you want, as long as you respect, don't lose to Blood Moon, don't lose to Reanimator, don't, just lose to the card quality of Eldrazi without any fight. There's some stuff we have to pass, but aside from that, I mean, Legacy looks awesome. You should definitely be playing a lot of Legacy these days. I know I am, and with that, we have reached the conclusion of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed my breakdown, and yeah, I mean, if you do well at Eternal Weekend, I might feature you, and that should be pretty darn awesome. So that's just a little more motivation to do well at the tournament. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.